The British Empire wasn't built on fair trade. It was built on piracy. Not the kind with eye patches and rum, but the kind backed by royal authority, wealthy investors, and government ambition. This is the story of how Queen Elizabeth I turned pirates like Francis Drake and Henry Morgan into state-sponsored entrepreneurs, and how their plundered fortunes built the foundation of the modern world. Because when governments need money, they always find their pirates. In the late 1500s, England was nearly bankrupt. Spain ruled the oceans, its ships overflowing with gold and silver from the New World. England, by contrast, had empty treasuries, a weak navy, and no colonies to draw wealth from. Queen Elizabeth I faced a problem. Her kingdom needed money to survive, but she couldn't raise taxes or borrow more from nobles. So she found a different path, one that blurred the line between business and crime. Instead of competing with Spain through trade, she decided to steal from it. That's where the pirates came in. Elizabeth began issuing what were called letters of marque, official licenses to rob enemy ships. These documents turned ordinary pirates into privateers. They were free to attack Spanish vessels as long as they shared the profits with the crown. Men like Francis Drake and Henry Morgan became part-time criminals and full-time businessmen. Their voyages were backed by investors, including royal officials and merchants in London. Each raid was a high-risk, high-reward financial venture. In 1577, Francis Drake set out on one of the most legendary missions in history. He circled the globe, raiding Spanish settlements and capturing ships packed with gold, silver, and jewels. When he returned to England, his ship, the Golden Hind, was so full of treasure that it nearly sank under its own weight. The value of the loot equaled half of England's entire annual income. Queen Elizabeth personally boarded the ship and knighted Drake on the spot. A pirate had just become a hero of the empire. The crown had discovered something revolutionary. Piracy could be profitable policy. Instead of spending to build colonies, England could raid its rivals and fund its future. These privateering ventures paid off national debts, expanded the navy, and helped establish overseas settlements. Drake's backers made returns of over 4,000%, profits so huge they made piracy look like smart investment. Nobles, merchants, and even politicians began pouring money into similar expeditions. England had created what could only be called a pirate economy. The wealth stolen from Spain didn't just fill royal coffers, it transformed England's entire economy. Banks grew richer, shipyards busier, and trade routes expanded. The influx of silver funded exploration, naval power, and eventually empire. But it came at a cost. Spanish towns in the Caribbean were burned. Indigenous people suffered and died. Thousands were killed or enslaved. The so-called Age of Discovery was in reality an age of organized theft. The empire wasn't born from trade, it was born from blood and plunder. As the decades passed, open piracy became harder to sustain. Spain grew stronger, and piracy risked open war. So England found a new, more civilized way to do the same thing. The Crown started granting corporate charters, legal monopolies over global trade routes. The most famous of these was the East India Company. These corporations didn't just trade goods, they built armies, seized land, and toppled kingdoms. The pirates had traded their ships for ledgers and their swords for contracts, but the mission was the same: profit at any cost. This evolution from pirate to corporation became the backbone of the British Empire. The East India Company operated like a multinational government, driven not by morality, but by money. The same investors who once funded plundering voyages now financed colonization. Violence was no longer random, it was structured,
organized, and fully sanctioned. The empire learned how to turn piracy into policy, theft into trade, and conquest into commerce. And that legacy didn't end with the fall of the British Empire. Its logic still shapes the modern world. The idea that private profit can thrive under public protection, that governments will always back the powerful when it serves their interest, is alive today. From corporate monopolies to offshore banking, from bailouts to billion-dollar loopholes, the system that began with royal piracy still sails on. The faces have changed, but the flag hasn't. The British Empire wasn't built on fair trade. It was built on piracy, legalized, organized, and glorified. And maybe, in our own time, we're still living with the same pattern. Because when nations need money, when power feels desperate, and when opportunity strikes, they'll always find their pirates.